Okay, today I'm actually going to be posting 3 videos. So today's learning module is going to be a review of story structure, because I feel like the last one kind of crammed like a lot of information into one video. So we're going to go over story structure again. We're going to take all that information that I used last time and we're going to go through it step by step. But I've also had a couple of people reach out to me who are using this as homework for their kids, or like a curriculum for their writing for their children as homeschool. And they wanted me to include a little bit more review of what I do when I'm going through the homework myself, for the parents who don't do this a lot and don't do a lot of writing. So I'm going to do this first one. We'll do the assignment. And then the next one will be me going over their book reports, which is their reading homework, but it ties into writing. So I'm going to do 2 shorter videos, and then we'll do the video on today's story structure. And then later in this week, we're going to transition to character. So we're going to go from story structure to character development, because character is actually where I start when I'm writing a new book. So I told you before, we talked about theme. You can start with theme. You can start anywhere. You can start with an idea or a hook or a premise. There are a lot of places to start, but I personally usually start with some kind of idea, and then I go straight into the main character, because for me, the story doesn't become a story until there's a main character to whom it is happening. So, all right, so then that means today we're going to start with the assignments. The assignments were, for this time, to take a story, a book, or a movie, doesn't matter, and go through the basic elements of story structure that we discussed. And what you're going to find when you're dealing with your kids is that the job that they do will vary based on how much time they've spent writing in the past, how many books they've read, what their age level and their grade level is. So everybody's is going to be different. The goal, of course, as with any kind of education, is that they're improving and learning. So we'll start with Tessa's. Tessa, you can stand next to me if you want for a second and just say your name and how old you are. So this is Tessa.
I'm Tessa and I'm 7.
So Tessa's 7. If we were at school this year, what grade would you be in?
I would be in 2nd grade.
Yeah. So mine all are every other year, so 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 8th. So Tessa would be in 2nd grade. This is what her assignment that she handed to me looks like. Okay. You can see that we've got some practice on handwriting, but we are working on that separately. We're also working on grammar with everybody, right? Separately. So we do writing twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, and then they do their homework and assignments and stuff. And then they do reading every day, and that book report is due at the beginning of the week. And then they also work on punctuation and grammar separately. All right, so Tessa's was Wrecking Ball, which I assume is Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Okay, so she said the hook is Greg feels crammed into one place and a strange thing happens. So when I'm describing the hook, what I would want to do is tell me, I don't really know why that is a hook. Greg feels crammed into one place. Was it funny when it started out, or how did it begin?
It started out, so he starts off,
You don't have it in front of you, so that's okay. We'll go ahead and skip this one. We can talk about it later. But that's one where I would say, why is that a hook? Was it because the audience was trying to figure out, like, if he's crammed into one place, what's going on? So if we open up Diary of a Wimpy Kid Wrecking Ball, we can look at it and we'll see. At the very beginning it says, I've read that in ancient times they used to bury kings and pharaohs with all their possessions. Back then I guess they thought you could take your things with you into the afterlife. When I get buried with all my junk, I might really regret it later on, because there's a bunch of junk all around him. So I think that the hook actually starts out kind of with a joke. It says, Mom's having me do spring cleaning to get rid of things I don't need. That seemed like a good idea until I realized just how much stuff I've actually got. So his closet dumps out with a bunch of junk. I spent the whole morning going through my closet, and it's crazy how much was packed in there. And it's not like it was organized. I've basically just been throwing things in my closet since we first moved in. So I think the hook would be kind of a joke about how much stuff we have. And probably most people could relate to it, because probably a lot of us have too much junk too. Do you think you have too much junk, Tessa?
Yeah.
Yeah, your room has a lot of stuff in it. Okay, so the gap is they think about moving and get a nice house and everything, and then they don't move. Okay, so that's good. So something that they're expecting to happen doesn't happen. The first plot point is he almost falls off the roof. That sounds eventful. The midpoint is they break a big hole into his home. The existing home that he's living in. Whoops. The second plot point is there are a bunch of mice and bugs and rats. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that leads in well to the all is lost, right? Mice and bugs and rats sounds all is lost to me. And then hero saves the day, they don't move. Is that because they end up making their current home something that they're willing to stay in?
No, it's because they can't sell it anymore because...
Because of all the crap? But are they able to fix it?
Yeah.
They don't actually go into that.
Okay, so obviously middle grade boy book, maybe slightly different than what I write. Okay, that was good though. I think you did a nice job of laying things out. I think some of the other kids might go into pinch points and stuff, but because Tessa's 7, I feel like identifying the hook, the gap, the first plot point, the midpoint, the second plot point, and the hero saving the day is pretty good. So I would give her an A on that. Emmy's is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Getaway. The hook is we just got back from vacation. Why
That's
is that a
what it says
hook?
in the beginning because you don't know what the vacation was like, so you want to know.
Okay, so you would call it an intrigue hook.
Yeah.
Okay. The gap is they go on vacation, but Greg doesn't want to go, which is uncommon because usually kids want to go on vacation, right? The number 3, the first plot point is the flight was delayed. So when they're supposed to go on their trip, is this recounting the trip that they just took?
Yeah.
Okay. So the flight got delayed, which kind of put a problem in the vacation. Number 4, there was a pinch point. The plane is a nightmare. Okay, so that's one of the problems. This trip hasn't really been going great, and a trip is supposed to be fun. Number 5 is he is going scuba diving. Oh, this is the midpoint. He is going scuba diving, and there are scary animals like
Box jellyfish.
box jellyfish. So that's something he obviously doesn't want to do. Number 6, we have the second plot point. It says Manny catches a box jellyfish. Oh, man. So, which he was trying to avoid, obviously. And then number 7, all is lost.
They can kill you.
Ooh, that's scary. All is lost. Roderick is sun poisoned and Greg needs to go something Gregory. Tell Gregory. Teen Gregory.
No.
Go to.
Teen group or something.
Okay. And people pelt him with balls. Oh, that's not great. And then number 8, they need to sneak in and Greg and his family finally make it home. Okay. So it's not a very good getaway. The getaway is bad. And he runs into a bunch of problems, but they are able to make it back home safely. Okay. That's good. I'd give you an A on that. That's pretty good. It's
You forgot
easier.
to say my grade and name.
Okay. So Emmy, yeah, that's right. Emmy, you can come stand up here and tell us your name and your grade.
I'm Emmy, and I'm 9, and I'm in 3rd grade.
No, you moved from 3rd. My phone. Emmy would be in 4th grade this year.
Oh,
Right.
I meant 4th.
Those 3rd last year, but 3rd never really ended, so it kind of feels like we're still in 3rd. All right, so here is, I'll do Dora's next since we've been going in order. So Dora, you want to stand up and say your name and your age?
My name is Dora. I'm 11 years old and I'm in 6th grade.
If you see me doing this, I managed to pull out my back during PE today, which is awesome. I really like being 40. It's been fabulous so far. Okay. Dora's story structure is on Ratatouille, which is a film, which I really like. So the hook is that Remy is a rat, which is not a normal character to have a story about. They're not typically something that people love or adore or think are precious. And number 2, so that's good. But I think it's even more than that because he's a rat who is a strange rat. He's a rat who doesn't like garbage, right?
He's a rat who wants like gourmet food.
He's a picky rat who likes gourmet food and wants to be
A chef.
a chef. Okay. So number 2, the inciting event. His family gets carried away by a plumbing river thing. Well, it's more than that. There's a lady. It's his fault. So Remy is in learning to cook. He's watching a cooking show.
I don't really remember the beginning.
Okay. Remy is in learning to cook. He's watching a cooking show and he accidentally ends up alerting the granny whose house they live in to their presence. And so she pulls out her shotgun, tries to shoot Remy, and ends up blowing a hole in the ceiling and dropping 100 rats on herself. She flips out. This becomes a place they can no longer live. So Remy's weird eating habits result in their entire clan getting evicted from their home. And so they're floating off on some plumbing river and he gets lost. And so he gets lost in the city though. I think it's New York City, isn't it?
I thought it was Paris.
It is. Yeah, you're right. It's Paris. Okay, he gets lost in Paris. I know it's a big city. You're right. He gets lost in Paris, and he's kind of excited. He thinks now he's going to pursue his dream. So that's the choice that he makes after that inciting event. The first plot point, this is interesting. He finds a human who's so pathetic that he needs the help of a rat to not ruin things. So this human is it's his very first day on the job. And he is about to destroy the soup and ruin all his opportunities. But Remy sees it, steps in as a rat, fixes the soup. The human recognizes that the rat fixed his problem and then offers him a deal. Hey, how would you like to help me cook? Right? And you discover that by pulling on this guy's hair in weird ways under his chef's hat, he can actually operate his arms and legs like he's a human rat-powered robot. Okay, which I think is really funny. All right, so the pinch point is that the boss, the head chef of this restaurant, is suspicious and thinks that something weird is going on. Okay, so that's perfect. Those are all great. The midpoint where you amp up the stakes, that's great. The boss gets fired and is coming after him. So the head chef ends up, and there's a little bit more going on because you find out that the redheaded boy who Ratatouille is powering as his cooking robot, is actually the son of the guy who owned it, Gusteau, who's the guy who owned the restaurant and had passed away. And so the villainous chef probably knows this too, but he ends up and tries to oust him, but ends up getting fired. So then the second plot point, so then they manage to make things work with Remy powering Gusteau's son. That has come out, and he owns the restaurant now, but the chef is out to get them, right? He doesn't like that he's figured out that there's a rat somehow involved.
Sent a health inspector.
So he's sicked a health inspector on them, right? And the health inspector's coming. And the health inspector is sure to know what? Now, everything's been amped up again because Remy has run into his family, and Remy has gotten into a fight with this kid that he's powering who can do nothing without Remy because he doesn't know how to cook, right? And the master of all these creations is Remy. So we actually have a health inspector coming, and we have someone else coming.
The fancy guy, I put that in there.
Okay, oh good, okay. So, and then the all is lost, that's the fancy guy. So the fancy guy is a food critic. So the food critic that ruined Gusteau and made him depressed, and they intimate that possibly that was part of the reason that he died. That guy is coming back to do a review now that Gusteau's restaurant has been revived. He's coming, and the health inspector's coming. So they can't just shut on the same day. So they can't just shut it down or avoid the rat thing because they need him so that they can pass muster on the food critic. And they also need the health inspector to pass them. And what ends up happening, the all is lost, is that it's a disaster. Remy has a fight with the chef. There are rats everywhere when the health inspector comes. They end up locking him into a box or something. It's a nightmare. The restaurant gets shut down. Everything's a disaster. But at the end, they do impress the fancy guy. And then they confess to the fancy guy that the real chef is a rat. And the fancy guy, who has always disagreed with Gusteau on his basic premise that anyone could cook, disagrees. It doesn't mean everyone can cook. It means that talent could come from anywhere, right? And it did. And the critic was proven wrong and accepts it. And then he actually ends up bankrolling a new restaurant that Remy is allowed to run himself. Okay, so I just love Ratatouille. It is a perfect, and you got an A. That was a great, you did a great job breaking things down. So, yes, Eli, do you want to come introduce yourself, or you don't care? You can.
Okay.
So the last one we'll read is from Eli.
My name is Elijah. I am 13, and I would be going to 8th grade today.
Okay.
This year.
All right, so he did Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So he set up the hook as Dumbledore leaves baby Harry Potter at the Dursleys' doorstep, which is weird because you don't usually ditch a baby, but also he's magical, so that's interesting. So there's both intrigue, suspense. So number 2, the inciting event, Harry talks to the snake and Dudley falls through the glass. That, I would actually put that almost personally, you could call it the inciting event. To me, I think that's still a hook because Harry doesn't know what's going on. So basically the hook, in my opinion, in this story took a 2-part. It was a Dumbledore drops him off. And also we see that there's something that's not quite the same about Harry because this guy who dropped him off had magic, and Harry, who is ignored and mistreated by these people.
That makes sense to me.
They can't talk to snakes, and they can't erase the glass, right?
And then bring it back.
I think that the inciting event, Eli put it as the first plot point. I think the inciting event is when the letters start coming. And for the first time, you see Harry trying to go against his aunt and uncle, which he's never done before. So to me, that's the inciting event, because he's finally making a choice to do something. But I see what you're saying. You put that as the first. Well, and then you see the sequence of events. Harry has to try harder and harder, but he keeps getting foiled by the Dursleys, right? They will not let him get these letters, which I think is one of the major plot problems with the book, because I would think that they would just want him out. But I get that they're seeing this as like a gateway to him becoming more like his mother, who they didn't approve of. But
I would just be like, well, if I got a letter, I'm gonna slide it in there and then read it later. Instead of being like, hey everybody, I got a letter.
yeah, well, Harry's a little kid, so he doesn't always make the best decisions. So I think properly so, he put the first plot point is Hagrid bursts the door down and Harry goes with him. So Harry has to make a decision here when this big, enormous hairy guy shows up and says, hey, you're supposed to come with me and be a wizard. And Harry's like, whoa, what the doodles? And if he hadn't been able to talk to a snake and erase the glass, he might not have made that decision. So you do have a decent argument for inciting event being that, because that kind of made Harry think, what is going on? Something in my life is different. Okay, so it could go either way. The first plot point, though, Harry chooses to go with Hagrid to Hogwarts. So that was a big decision he had to make. He could have stayed with his family, his crappy family, but he doesn't. So he trusts a big hairy guy who showed up on a flying motorcycle with a cake that he clearly can't spell on. All right, so then the pinch point, Harry learns about Voldemort and how he killed Harry's parents. Good. The midpoint is a troll gets loose and Harry and Ron save Hermione.
I can't spell his name. Remember, could you at least spell it?
Yeah. So the midpoint, that's probably the midpoint. He has to decide whether to step up or run. And instead of doing the smart thing and getting the teachers, he decides he's going to take the troll on himself. But the reason that has emotional impact is because what?
It's Hermione.
He finally says, I made a mistake. I haven't been a friend to her. We weren't very nice. We made fun of her, right? It hurt her feelings. And so he steps up and takes the consequences of that action. And I think, to me, even more important than battling the troll is when they say, what happened here? What does he say?
Hermione takes the blame, and then he says,
Hermione steps in and takes the blame, right? And you see that because he came in to defend his friend, she's clearly forgiven them, or she wouldn't have taken the blame on herself, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so then second plot point, Harry has his first Quidditch match. His broom is jinxed or something, and Harry Fanny learns about Nicholas Flamel. Okay, so I actually think it's probably Nicholas Flamel, but there is a lot going on with the Quidditch match as well.
Yeah.
And you see that there's something going on. So that's almost like a pinch point rolled into, but go ahead and tell me.
What I found with this is that this book, it spends so much time getting you used to the world that they live in. So for the first half, it's pretty much still like, oh, okay.
Interesting things floating along.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then they only start. That's right.
The action.
Everything leads up to Nicholas Flamel.
That's right.
I didn't want to. They don't put enough information for that.
Yeah. So actually, that's right. She is able to kind of fumble along and not really follow the story structure rules very well because, and this is interesting to note, because she has such a fascinating and rich world that people are compelled to keep reading by wanting to learn about what this crazy world they wish they were a part of was like, instead of focusing exclusively on story. So the story structure in this book is actually, it's good, but it's sort of a mess. It's kind of jumbled. And the reason is she's able to get away with it because she has so much going on. But I think also having so much going on results in it being a mess, because a lot of these things don't make sense until you understand how the world works. So whereas on Earth, I could tell you this leads to this, leads to this, and you would have a lot of assumptions. Here, we don't really know what Quidditch is. We don't know who Hagrid is, and we don't know what Hogwarts is, and we don't understand the rules of the game there. So she has to spend a lot more time setting up the world. So that makes fantasy sometimes you have to blur the lines a little bit in terms of how the story structure would normally go, and you're given a little more leeway because you have to explain so many things.
I really hope people who are watching this have seen Harry Potter.
Probably most of them have. The all is lost moment is Voldemort takes over Rand?
Professor Quirrell.
Oh, Quirrell. Okay. Quirrell and attacks Harry. So that's the guy with the weird turban and then he has the freaky face on the back of his head. Yeah. So because obviously Harry, who could barely fumble his way through knocking a troll out by accident, is not prepared to take on Voldemort. But Harry in a brave, so hero saves the day, Harry in a brave mash of or something of boldness, touches his face and then passes out. So this may be a weak point. Remember I said that the hero absolutely, positively must be the one doing the saving? This is probably the weakest part of the Harry Potter stories, in my personal opinion, is that Harry doesn't really do a lot. He doesn't work hard. If you go in, and I love the Harry Potter books, so this is not me slamming them at all, but if you are to go in and look at the reviews, other than troll reviews where people just say, this book sucks because it's big and they want to look fancy, the real critical reviews that make a good point are that Harry is not the strongest hero. The stories work largely because he is fascinating and it's a fascinating world and we kind of feel sorry for him, and he's been made to be very empathetic because his human family sucks so bad. But he's not a super strong hero. He doesn't really do a lot. He has trouble believing in his friends, which is understandable given his past and his family. And he's not super impressive, and there's not a ton of character development over the course of this book, but there's a little. So anyway, he ends up saving the day by having great parents who love him, and that's about it. So that was good. I'd give you an A on this too.